You're listening to Seattle Real Estate Podcast.
Welcome to the Seattle Real Estate Podcast. I'm your host, Sean Reynolds. And there is a high likelihood that you've heard my guest today on the radio. He's had a ton of airtime, particularly on the Ron and Don show on Cairo. Last year, he closed 69 transactions for a total volume of $46 million. He sold some of the more unusual homes in the Pacific Northwest, including the Denning Castle, which was a European-styled castle, also a private Waterski Resort, a $16 million Lake Washington compound, and a Magnolia Estate in Seattle owned by former Seattle Mariner Jaime Moyer. Please welcome longtime Keller Williams real estate broker, Wes Jones.
Thanks for having me, Sean.
Yeah, you bet. And we've been kind of working on this podcast for a little bit. You've been ramping up some of your marketing on the Cove estate, and I saw that and thought you have, I think, one home left to sell in there.
That's right.
Yeah, and for the listeners and watchers on YouTube, Eagle Cove Estate was a big waterfront compound that you sold off portions of, and you've still got something kind of going.
Yeah, here's what Eagle Cove Estate was. There was the family that actually owned the old Barbie Mill, the sawmill down in Renton. They eventually sold that off to Barbie Mill, and they kept a small piece of land to the south, and that's where they had 3 luxury homes, a guest house, and then there was a still is a state-of-the-art boathouse. And it was built as a family compound, and then it was decided to finally go ahead and move on from that. So they had contracted me to go ahead and sell it, and we went out for the first year to market it all together. So all 5 pieces. So the 3 luxury homes, the guest house, the boathouse, all in one. And we actually did have offers, for that. But we weren't able to put something together. So at that point, we went ahead and split things up individually, and that made for a little bit easier sale. There's more people looking for a waterfront home, at $2 to $3 million, here in the Seattle area, than there is for a $16 million, compound. And I'm actually on our last house. I'm in a counteroffer situation on it, and I'm hoping to put that together to have a contract this afternoon or tomorrow.
Wow, that's amazing.
Yeah,
yeah. I know
it feels good. I mean,
yeah.
So I still have to put it together and still have to get it to closing. But it feels like it should happen. It feels like we're close.
Right. So tell me, how do you get into selling properties like this? Give me a little bit of your background. How many years have you been doing this, Wes?
Gosh, I was first licensed and did my first deal in 2006.
Okay.
And I was doing a number of things in real estate the first couple of years. I was working with a builder kind of on a part-time basis as a project manager, and also intertwined with some property management as well as doing sales. So I would say, from a production standpoint, I was, compared to other agents, I was a full-time agent, probably doing, 10 to 20 deals, 2006, 2007, 2008, but still doing some property, management and project management for the builder. Then 2009 came around, and that's when things got really, really ugly. And there was not a lot of real estate happening. And I had run into an old friend who had been living down in Arizona, and I had made a comment to him like, hey, our market has really taken a dive, and we're seeing these things called, short sales. What's a short sale? I know what a foreclosure is, but what's these short sales, and it doesn't look like anybody knows what they're doing. And there seems like there's a huge opportunity. He kind of laughs to himself. He's like, I'm down in Phoenix. It's kind of the short sale capital of the world, and I've been doing this for the last couple of years. I said something like, gosh, it seems like there's a real opportunity up here. And we just kept the conversation going, and I basically started spending time with him down in Arizona, figured out what the process was to actually get these things sold and closed, and have it be the right situation, and have it make sense for the seller, and actually have a reasonable possibility to get the deal closed. and then kind of brought that system, back up here and ran super hard with short sales from 2009 to 2015.
Okay. And so you were a short sale guy, kind of not out of the chute, but that was kind of the first segment of your career.
It was what I was most known for at the time. And the truth,
Right.
I'd been selling for a couple of years, to friends and family, kind of like how
working your sphere.
Yep, and some new construction, but the new construction dried up.
Right.
And then there was friends and family, so I still always did that throughout my short sale career. But I was so well known for the short sales because I was really one of the few options. I was one of the few credible options. I mean, there's plenty of people that would take one on, but there was really only a handful of us that really knew what we were doing and really could maneuver the different banks and the lien holders, and be able to give the proper advice, and really have the trust from the buyers and the buyer's agent that we were gonna actually get this done. And I mean, we were everywhere. We were on radio, we were in the news, we had other real estate agents referring those types of deals because it was just something that most people didn't have the skill set or the willingness to take the time to go ahead and do, because short sale, from my first conversation, to closing the deal, that could be
months.
It could be a 12 to an 18-month
Yeah.
process. There could be a number of months where I was talking to people and they had not made up their they hadn't made up their mind that we got to get the paperwork in, and then back in 11, what was days on market? 180.
No, I was going to say 120 to 180.
Right.
Yeah.
I mean, there was a point during those days where we were at 8 months supply of real estate.
Right.
So it was a long process, and a lot of people just they didn't have the bandwidth, and I built a business around it, and so it was something that we wanted. It was something that we embraced, and it's actually something that we still do and that we're still set up for. Just the difference is instead of doing a couple hundred short sales a year, now we do a couple short sales.
Right, like one or two or three, something like that.
Yeah, we've done 2 this year so far. I don't have anything else on the books, but I'd actually love to do 2 or 3 a month, but I'm not actively pursuing them right now, and it's probably something that I should, because we're set up for it, and my team still wants to do it, and we're still having great success.
And with the coronavirus, who knows?
Hey, you never know. This is crazy. I'm sure I told you about this, but we closed a short sale last November that had 7 liens on it.
Wow.
3 loans and 4 liens. One of them we actually had to show up at an attorney's office in Seattle and wait for them because he was ignoring our call, and he was the last person that we needed to sign off on the deal.
That is so funny.
Yeah.
So you showed up at somebody's office
Yes.
and said, "Hey, we need you to address this."
We camped out. We
Right.
camped out at his office, and we weren't going away. And finally, it was like, "Okay, come on in. Like, let's talk about this.
Right. Let's get this squared away.
Yeah,
Get it off the books.
And we were in. We came to find out. There was just he was making it personal, and by getting in front of him, we were able to lay out the options. Like, hey, you can keep it personal and get nothing, or you can work with us here and you can get something.
And make something.
And he ended up making a business decision and getting something, which is essentially what the banks would do.
Right. Tell me about the transition then from the short sale market to what you're kind of known for now, which is marketing really upper end and unique properties. The 4 properties I mentioned earlier, those are not your standard upper end properties. They have something really unusual about them that kind of applies to a certain segment of the marketplace. How do you get into that business?
Well, I think I would call those ones like outside of the box.
Yeah.
And I got to tell you, Sean, I'm not really sure how that started. Like, I've got a lot of exposure through social media and through radio, and I think maybe one of the first ones was probably Jaime Moyer's house, the Moyer Mansion, over in Magnolia, and it was a property that a couple of really well-known top agents had taken a stab at and not performed at. And I think that they were just looking for something different, and in the scheme of things, although I don't necessarily feel young compared to the field of real estate experts that's out there, I guess I'm on the younger side,
Right.
Here at 41. And this is going back, probably even, 5 years ago, where I think that we're willing to do some things and try some things that other people may not. Like, I'm willing to do some marketing, and I'm willing to spend more money to present my properties a certain way. And I think that there's some people out there that they don't want the same old.
Right.
And
Something different.
They want something different.
So you provide kind of a cleaner, maybe not necessarily cleaner, but a newer perspective on marketing.
I think it's it's a higher end, but most importantly, it's like a more proactive approach. And I've tried a lot of different things, and
Right.
Some of them have worked, some of them don't. So I'm kind of going all in on the stuff that has proven to me that is effective, and staying away from the stuff that is not.
If you were to pick like the top 3 things that make your marketing different on these upper end properties, what would you say those things are?
Number one, I'll just go to photography and having the best photography available. Because let's be honest, like, the first impression is no longer in the house; it's online,
Yep.
and you've got like 2 or 3 seconds to grab somebody's attention. They're going to be swiping through, and you're going to get through a couple pictures, and if you don't have something that is intriguing them, they're going to move on to the next property. Just like somebody's going to move on, and they're on those dating apps. They're going to keep swiping. They don't see what they like, and then they're going to move on. I think it's the same thing in real estate.
You should probably sponsor Sell with Wes on like Tinder.
As my marriage is coming in, it's like 12th or 13th year. I don't know if that's
that may not be the right.
That's probably not the right
Yeah.
avenue that I'm going to be going for.
Yeah.
But no, photography is something that I've been super passionate about for years. Since I started moving away from the short sales. It's not that I moved away from short sales; they moved away from me because the market did. So as I evolved into what I was going to do next, it's like, what can I do to stand out? Well, the easiest thing that you can do is to legitimately have the best photography possible.
Right.
And here's the thing: anybody can do it. Just most people aren't willing to pay for the best.
Right.
And that's something that I'm willing to do. Secondly is video. And you could make an argument that video is the most important. I'm going to go with photos first.
At Summit Properties Northwest, we do make that argument.
There you go.
Video is the most important.
No, you can definitely make the argument, but here's the thing: to get to the video, they're probably got to be interested in your pictures first.
Right.
But to really set yourself apart, high quality, interesting video with facts and content, maybe even some lifestyle, what's going on with the property and in the surrounding area. That's something that you can do to really tell, a story. If a picture's worth 1,000 words, what's a video worth?
Right.
What's a high quality, video worth? And video is one of those things. Everyone keeps saying like, oh, video, it's the future. It's the future of this. It's the future of that.
We've been hearing that for 10 years, and people still aren't doing it.
Right, but it's but I'm going to say it's not the future. It's the present.
It's here.
It's
now.
here. It's
Yeah.
right now. If you're not involved with it, if you don't have a component, you're going to get left behind. And
Right. Or you are already left behind.
there you go. And I see a lot of people out there like still really pounding here's my high-end luxury ad in a magazine. And I'm
Right.
like, I think that's such a small segment of people that are going towards print. And I really think that you're going to find more people doing that. It's more ego marketing.
Right.
It's more about marketing.
Look at me, look at the property I'm marketing, not necessarily I'm doing everything I can to sell this property.
Right. Never mind the fact that print, has a 30 to 60 day lag time that you
it's going to be sold.
Right. And
Yeah.
and that your property could very well be sold before it gets launched in that magazine. But hey, I got in the high-end luxury home magazine,
Right.
and it makes you feel good. Instead of putting my money into print like that, I've gone digital, and with digital, that includes like super high-end, video.
Wes has gone digital.
I see what you did there. The video is super important because, if you look at it, video, whereas print, that lasts as long as the whatever magazine or newspaper is in circulation. So that could be a day, that could be a week, that could be a month. Video is going to be around forever.
Right.
And you could conceivably be found anywhere in the world. From video.
Yep.
If you're doing the right thing.
And it's searchable.
Yes.
YouTube is searchable, and that's the big thing that I hammer on with people, is that if people want to find you, they're not going to find you from a print ad in a magazine 2 months ago. They're going to find you on a Google or a YouTube search, and guess what? Your content's going to pop up. There's going to be a cool video that you did. There you go.
Yeah, so as far as like standing out, I think that it's photos, it's video, and I'm spending the money, on a $500,000 to $1 million property that I think a lot of people aren't doing until they're to, be in a much higher price range. I've just said like, hey, this is what I'm going to do. This is what my properties are going to look like. If it doesn't matter if it's, $400,000 or $1 million, it's getting the best professional photography because that's what you need. That's really what you need to stand out, and it's what your clients need to sell for the most amount of money. But outside of those two things, I think it's a willingness to try something new, and be flexible. But I really think that it's our pre-listing building inspection. I think that it's our process. So a lot of people know me for like the marketing that we do. I actually think our process is stronger in getting a home ready for sale, and that starts with our pre-listing building inspection.
Right. And I've actually worked with you on the appraisal side on quite a few properties, and I think on every one of these properties, I've probably pitched in with at least my 5-minute opinion of what I think value is. And sometimes I'm way off, but more often than not, I'm in the general ballpark, and these are hard properties to pin down a price for.
They really are, and it's not like it ends up being a combination. It's like, okay, well, what if we were to get an appraisal? That's where you've come in. That's where you've really helped out. Like, well, what's my opinion? Okay, what are the seller's goals, and trying to find a way to align those up, because when you have something that's really outside the box, you can put in a lot of work and say, well, this should be the price, and then you just don't know. You just don't know until you're out there, and until you start getting feedback.
Right.
And that's always one of the things, like with my clients, like, especially on these specialty properties, you kind of got to be in it for the long haul. If you're expecting like a multiple offer situation, you're not going to get it on something like this. So I think a lot of clients that have found me, like, they understand, okay, well, hey, Wes is willing to work hard. He's willing to work harder than maybe other people that, I have talked to. And as long as we're in alignment, I'm willing to try things. Like, as long as they're willing to be flexible with, me, and, not necessarily expect a multiple offer situation on a very unique property. This is, the more unique that it gets, it doesn't always mean the more money that something is going to go for. But it may mean more time it's going to take to find that right buyer, just because that gene pool of buyers is just a much smaller sliver when you get super unique.
And the longer a property is on the market, and as long as you're doing your job, that provides you more exposure than the typical property that gets sold in under a week.
Yeah, that's right. And back in those short sale days when we were doing all the deals, like those short sales were taking anywhere from 6 to 12 months. Our sign would be in the yard,
forever.
It seemed like it practically became a permanent fixture, and and that just that beget additional business from the sign calls. We had a massive buyer business back then.
Right, just from leads generated from people calling in off the signs.
Right.
Yep. Let's go into, so we've talked about the Jaime Moyer compound a little bit. That was an estate, that was like a couple of acres or an acre and a half.
It was, it was like, it was over an acre, it was under 2. The house history goes back to like, I'm going to get close, like 1914, 1916, super old. 2 stories with a basement, 7,500 square feet. You had, which is just a monster house, it's a monster house today. It's even more monster house, that was built back then. And there was some real, historical, there was a lot of stories, prior to Jamie buying that in the early 2000s. There was, some stories that go back to the 30s and 40s on how that was used. It's housed concerts, it used to be like a community center, but, and it's been a number of years. I'm kind of, it's kind of missing me exactly what else was there. But yeah, very, it was big, it was large, it had some historical, implications as well.
And it was in the Magnolia community, just west of, call it west of the Space Needle.
Yep.
Northwest of the Space Needle. How long did that take you to sell?
That was more like 60 days. It was maybe like 60, 90 days. And I think that was back in 2014.
Yeah.
And we were just realizing that we were pulling out of the Great Recession.
Things were starting to turn up, but we were still looking over our shoulders.
Yes.
Because that was a brutal time period to get through if you were in real estate.
Yeah, people were still talking about like double dip recession. I think it was like far enough along, and we just started hearing about this new company, Amazon, and like all of the jobs that it was starting to bring to town. But it didn't nearly have the presence.
Facebook was coming, Google was coming.
It was all coming, but it wasn't.
Right.
It was
But it
not
wasn't
here
here
yet, or it was not. Really, it was just starting to impact things. So like that was like a 60 to a 90 day type marketing time.
What'd you end up selling that for? Do you remember?
Oh, 3.5.
Okay.
Yeah,
Which
right
at the
around
time,
there.
coming out of the Great Recession, that was an enormous
We were
number.
thrilled. We
Yeah,
were
big number.
absolutely thrilled with that.
Because that property, even though it was a big house and a big lot, it didn't really have much in the way of views that you expect from a property in that area of Seattle.
That's right. You had some peekaboo views, like from the second story, and the master, but they weren't massive.
Right.
But you had a really amazing setting. This was one of the coolest things that it had. It had a saltwater pool. Then he had this great like side, patio on it with an,
He had a batting cage.
Yeah, well, I'm getting that.
Yeah,
Like the patio had like an outdoor, pizza grill, and then on the side he had a batting cage that took a bunch of lights and turf from the Kingdom.
Oh,
like
wow.
how cool! Like how cool
That's
is that?
historic.
It is.
Yeah, hope they
It
don't rip
is.
that out down the road, thinking, let's remodel this.
I mean, anybody who's there has,
That's pretty cool.
they're gonna know the
a baseball
history.
fan, they're gonna keep that.
Well, if they're gonna know the history, and at the very least, they could use it for storage, and just
for sure.
and just keep it there, because
just enjoy
that was pretty cool.
Did you do any specific marketing differently on that one?
We did do a little bit, and that's when the kind of the foreign investor, was just starting to kind of peek around in, in the Seattle area. Looking back, you can see that values back then, it actually was a value. It was a massive value. It was a great time to buy something in Seattle. And a lot of the foreign investors that had been up in Vancouver, BC, were seeing, how expensive things had got up there. Like, well, what if we just went south, on I-5, into Seattle? And it's actually when I kind of got plugged in to some, international marketing and international advertising. And I was like, okay, hey, there seems to be this new market here. And what is something that we can do to differentiate ourselves? And there was a product that I found that it was allowing me to syndicate my listings into 92 different countries, and it was translating it into 22 different languages.
Wow, a lot of exposure.
Yeah, tons of exposure. So it's basically putting my listings onto the Zillow of whatever country, that
of international real estate.
Yeah, and ironically enough, after the fact, I was told that that's how this buyer did initially find us, was through those channels, and then they contacted their real estate broker, and it kind of went from there. So
interesting.
Yeah, that was my first.
So your marketing actually worked.
It actually worked. It actually did something. It wasn't just something that we talked about.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. One of the properties I worked on with you, because it was so unique, was the Denning Castle.
Oh, how timely this conversation
Tell
is.
me a little bit about the Denning Castle.
That's so funny because I just did a video wrap up for my database, and there was so I shoot video and do a monthly update, and there's somebody
which I received.
Outstanding.
Yeah.
And you got it this morning, and like a couple weeks ago, the marketing assistant who's on the other end of the camera helping me with this, she's like, "Hey Wes, what's over your shoulder?" She's like, "Is that a?" She's like, is that a crossbow? Is that a helmet? Like a piece of
some
armor?
kind of medieval artifact?
And I was like, yes, it is. Thank you so much for asking. Did I ever tell you about the time I sold a castle? And she's like, are you shitting me? And I was like, no, like this is a real story. So I went and told her about the time, that we had a castle. She's like, we need to do a whole segment on this.
Yeah.
So that actually went out to my database this morning, and so this was back, I don't know, 2017 or so, and I got a call from a guy, and this is the message that I got. It was like a Saturday morning, and the voicemail that I got was a guy telling me that he had a castle and that he needs a real estate agent with a big set of balls.
That was the criteria.
Yes, yeah,
and in your head you were like, sure, why not?
And those were his words, not mine. That was his message, and I was like, okay, this is an interesting guy. I need to give him a call back and see what's going on. And he starts going on about this castle that he built, and I'm like, okay, old timer, I bet you've got a house that you've got like a little castle-like structure.
Like one or two turrets.
Yeah, you've got like a fake turret, and you call it your castle.
The rest of it's a 1990s style 2-story.
Exactly. I'm like, there's no way. And then like kind of halfway through the conversation, he's like, you don't believe me, do you? And I was like, hey, I get a lot of calls. Like people tell me a lot of different things. And he's like, hey, go to YouTube, go check this out. Like and I was like, okay, let's play along. Let's go. And I was able to find some video of his castle.
If you were to do a search for the Denning Castle, would you just type in Denning Castle? Would it come up?
I actually kept that website. It would, because there was so much publicity over it. Yeah. But I kept the website, thedenningcastle.com.
And that was located in
Graham,
Washington,
which is south of Puyallup. Yeah. And so I was able to see like this guy, what he was talking about. It was legit, and it was like, I want to do something really outside the box, like. And the guy sounded like he legitimately needed help, and I was interested. So I went, I took a chance and drove a little over an hour to go meet him. Spent the afternoon with him, and I felt like I had a history lesson. It was like it's somewhere between going through Disneyland and a history lesson. And this guy had built a castle to his specifications, which is really like a 2,800 square foot structure, and this thing was like overbuilt, Sean. Like the foundation or the walls, like it was like 18 to 24 inches thick of concrete. Like this would be your bug out place. This is where you want to go when end of times is coming.
When the zombie apocalypse comes, you've got your castle.
Right. This thing's
hunkered down.
Yeah, this thing is going to survive the nuclear blast. You don't even have to get down to the basement. Like this thing was just so well built. And
as I remember from the videos you took, he had gone to Europe multiple times.
Yes.
And got all of his plans and his architecture from actual castles.
What this was is, and if anyone actually goes and takes a look at the Denning Castle, you'll see this, like, oh, that looks kind of familiar. What he did is he morphed the Disney castle with his favorite castle that he had found over in Europe, and he put those together, and that was his design.
That's how it ended up.
Yeah.
As I remember, it was a bigger home, but it had like 2 bedrooms.
Yeah, it was 2, and a third one that you could like use, like it was like a den, but you could turn it.
So an unusual floor plan.
Yes,
and then it was on maybe 16 acres.
It was on 20 acres, but there was really like 15.
Usable.
But there's only like 5 acres that was usable. But it had this great big shop. It also had this like he called it his village, and it was like really big like tough sheds. That he had different purposes for. One of them was his blacksmith shop. He He was like legitimately working with iron,
Wow.
in there. Hey,
Medieval.
it's a castle. Yeah,
he was getting medieval.
He was all in on this thing.
Yeah.
And I just went down there and I was like, man, I don't know what we're going to be able to sell this for, but I know that we can do some amazing stuff with marketing, and he's going to have his best opportunity,
right.
If we're working with this, versus somebody else.
And I remember giving you a price opinion on that one, and the seller wanted to start off considerably higher.
Yeah, I think that the price that, like, we were kind of feeling the same thing in the range, like
you and I were.
Yeah. And I think we were kind of 550 to low 600s, and maybe like 600s was kind of pushing it because it was not a huge livable space. And like on paper, you're like, oh my gosh, this is a castle. This is on 20 acres. This must be worth $1 million. But when we were looking at luxury real estate in the area at that time,
in Graham, Washington, which is far out,
right?
Yeah.
Luxury real estate on acreage was going in the high 500s to high 600s.
Yeah, maybe 700 tops going.
And that was for like a palatial spread.
Right.
And he wanted to give it a shot at something higher. So we started at 700 or 725, and we were there for a while, and then through some price drops, we ended up selling around 600.
I was going to say 600
about a year later.
Right. So it took you some time.
Yep.
What kind of, and I know you got a ton of exposure from that marketing campaign.
Yep.
What kind of things did you do and I think you sold that property twice.
We did.
Tell me about your marketing on the Denning Castle.
So my marketing plan behind this was, and I would love to get a redo on this because, the castle is really what kind of helped create a lot of my systems and ideas on what to do, something with outside the box, or just what we should be doing as real estate agents to stand out, period. But I went down, and at the time I got the best videos and the best photos that I had available to me, and I actually went out and I hired a copywriter, like a professional writer, to do all of the remarks for this.
Okay.
I hired somebody to help me with PR, like basically like part-time, pitch this. And my goal with this thing was to actually make it go viral and to get coverage through the media that you couldn't buy unless you had something that was super special, or super, unique. Like, it has to be so unique that they want to feature you. And
the castle was unique.
And the castle was that.
Yeah.
And because people are like, it opened a lot of doors, like, oh yeah, you've got a castle, sounds interesting. And then I'd send over what I had. They're like, oh no, it's
actually a castle.
You actually have
This
a
is
castle. This thing was.
Did it have a moat?
He called it a moat, but it was like kind of around half the side. It was a giant water feature, but he called it the moat.
Yeah.
He called the basement the dungeon. And it kind of felt like one, but it was the basement. But
still a house.
Yeah, it still had. It's very livable. But my marketing plan was to get the best that I could and to get this thing to go viral and to use the media in ways that typically are reserved for I don't know, celebrity right. House sales.
Yeah.
And that's what we did.
Or you tell a little story.
Yep. Yeah, and that's what we did. And if somebody goes to the denningcastle.com, we have everything listed there, all of the places that we could find that this place got featured. So I think the biggest one that we got was the front page of the Tacoma News Tribune.
Yeah,
I mean
that's a big newspaper.
That's huge.
Yeah,
for the South Sound, that's the newspaper.
Yeah,
we got King 5 to come down and to do a segment, and then from that King 5 segment, that other like local news stations picked that up, and it was featured across the nation. I had Realtor.com fly in twice to do a feature on it. There was a bunch, and there was, Curbed Seattle. There was a bunch of blogs, a bunch of local news, and there was a place over in Europe, and I'm forgetting what it was, but it's like one of the biggest websites in Europe covered it, and somebody down in Australia covered it, and it just kind of kept rolling, just kept picking up steam. I actually email blasted the castle to most major cities on the West Coast and the East Coast. mainly really positive response, like, this is so cool, so creative, a few FUs and take me off your list.
Right.
But
why are you sending me this?
Because it's a castle and you've never seen anything like this.
Plus, you might need to buy the castle.
That's right. Did some target marketing to like Renaissance fairs. There's actually a huge Renaissance fair, down like in Enumclaw every single summer, and it's got like 12,000 people that follow that page. We marketed, to those people. So yeah, this was my first experience in actually getting a listing to go viral, and using the media to help promote my properties.
Right. And
it really does take something. You've got to have something interesting. Like, I can't do this with
everything.
Yeah, with everything. Well, I can't do this with
Yeah.
most things.
Right.
I couldn't do this with my house if I was to sell it.
Right.
But if you have a unique feature, there are ways to get it out there to the media or in front of the right person, via target marketing.
So going back to so special kind of marketing to the special properties, but what I have seen you do is I've seen you do some mega open houses on darn near anything. Tell me about that. Tell me, like, who do you bring in for a mega open house?
Oh gosh, we've done a bunch of different stuff. Most recently, we did one in the last month. It was just here at a property in Bellevue, and it's a neighborhood that I work a lot and have a lot of friends. I brought in a donut truck where they made mini donuts on site, and you had a combination of like 12 different toppings that you could have.
Because who doesn't like a donut at open house?
Exactly. So we've had the donut truck. There's a coffee guy that I have come in from time to time where he just sets up. It's basically like a super high end, espresso cart that you'd have at any, catered event. We've had he calls himself like a micro batch ice cream guy. Oh my gosh. Like he's making some small batch and
ice
it is
creams.
so good, and he's always like, here, take a couple of these pints home. I'm like, yo, sure, I'll do that. This will last the next month or two. They're gone in 2 days.
Like a couple of days.
Yeah,
because they're so good.
It's terrible. I had to cut that out because I was it was taking me too far in the wrong direction.
Right.
Off my diet.
But so delicious.
Mm-hmm. I had one of the neighborhood kids come and DJ while we were doing one of those events, and I've had a taco truck too.
What kind of response do you get? So is there a tangible way you can kind of measure when you have those events and when you don't? Or is it all just kind of based on the specific open house and how those people in that neighborhood react?
It's a tough one. Is
it worthwhile?
It depends.
Okay.
It is for me when I do something like that. It's strategic, or it's something that the seller has asked me to do because they've seen me do it elsewhere.
Right.
And I'm open to doing it if I know that I can get traction. If I know that I can get people there,
right?
For it. And what I found is there's got to be some type of neighborhood group, because if you're just going to do like your standard open house, like you're going to get and you're going to cater it, you're probably not going to get that many more people to come through. But if there's a way to promote it locally, if you can target Facebook, advertise, to the neighborhood, or even better is when there's like some type of neighborhood communication going on already,
right.
Whether it's a Facebook group, or next door, or a combination of the two, or, a neighborhood email distribution, that you can get on. That's the way that you're really going to
something
get
hyper local.
Yes, it's got to be hyper. It's got to be hyper local,
right.
And it's got to be a way to get that information out, ahead of time, so people know that there's actually a reason to show up. So, do you get any additional buyers? It's tough to say. Probably not. A lot of people are coming for the food, right, or the event. But, if we're speaking to real estate agents here, Sean, and if you are trying to make an impression, and if you are trying to get, in front of the neighborhood and future sellers, well, now you've just turned an open house into a block party, and, you're having some really great conversations with people in a casual manner, and you're probably not gonna forget the real estate agent that had the coffee cart and the donut truck.
Yeah, who's that guy that had the great donuts or the great ice cream? What was his name?
Right.
I was like
it's memorable. So
Right.
I mean, I'm always like, I'm a big fan of like being strategic and being careful with your money. You got to pick and choose like the right place to do it, and make sure that you're getting the best bang for your buck out of it.
Right. So you do some amazing online marketing, and I know you have a team behind you.
Yeah.
So tell me about a couple of members of your team that are important with what you do, because you're putting out production that you need some help with.
Yep.
So tell me about, what does your team look like?
So there's a couple different places that I go. I go for video. If that's is that the direction, or
video, but more specifically, people that you work with daily, like Abby and Erica.
So we're actually, for doing the volume and the deals that we do, we're actually pretty lean and mean. It's 3 of us, and then I outsource a lot. So on my team is Abby, who is my co-listing agent. Listing manager, kind of slash, catch-all. Yeah. And then Erica has been with us for about 5 years too, and she runs with a majority of the buyers that come to us.
So she acts as kind of a buyer's agent.
She that's not her. She's an agent. She ends up working more with buyers. But she's more than welcome. She can work those as well. As sellers, but she predominantly more as a buyer's agent.
As a buyer's agent.
Yeah.
Okay.
And then a lot of stuff that else we do is outsourced. So I've got my vendors, that I go to. So when we're talking about the online, I've got 2 different sources that I work with for video. I've really only got one for photography, because I really, really like, what it is, that they're doing and the product that they're turning out. So
you've got your main go-to.
I've got my go-to.
Yeah.
I
think everybody does, and then we've all got some backups.
Yep.
And it's kind of like, that's just how you operate.
It is. I mean, well, because if you find something, if you find the quality that you're looking for, there's not a whole lot of reason, to go elsewhere, unless you're no longer getting the service. Right. So,
Wes, do you have any other properties, like interesting ones like the ones we've talked about today, coming up that people could look forward to? Do you have anything along those lines?
Oh yeah, there's one that is coming up later this spring. It is it's a private island of 20 homes, and you can only get there via boat or airfield.
Wow. All right, so remote.
Yeah, it's remote.
This must be in the San Juan Islands.
It's in the San Juan. So you're not buying the whole island. You're just buying the house. Yep. But I think that this would be a great place to avoid the coronavirus and hunker down for a while.
Is that how you're going to pitch it?
No, who knows?
Yeah.
We'll see. We'll see if it's a relevant.
We'll see if it's a relevant thing.
We'll see if it's a relevant topic at that point. But it is it is off the grid. So it's a great off the grid retreat.
So you'll do, so we can expect to see some more unique marketing.
Absolutely.
Yep.
Yeah.
If people want to get in contact with you, what is the best way for a seller or a buyer?
Oh, just go to the website. Go to sellwithwes.com.
Sellwithwes.com.
SELL, sellwithwes.com. And, my phone number, my cell phone's right there, or you can just, you can email me through the website as well.
And we will also have your contact information in the description of the YouTube video.
Awesome.
So if people want to take a look there, they can do that. Wes, thank you so much for coming on today.
Is our time up already?
Insight. You said you had to go.
I do.
You have to leave.
Oh, man.
You've got another important listing appointment to go to.
Well, somebody's got to pay the bills.
Yeah. We can't just sit around and have a podcast pay for all of them.
Oh, man.
If only we could.
If only we could.
Maybe your donut guy could sponsor us.
You never know.
You never know. Thanks so much for coming on, Wes. Appreciate everything. And so, Cousin Wes, thank you so much.
Thank you, Cousin Sean.
All right. We'll catch up soon.
Bye.
Bye-bye. Don't forget to subscribe to our channel and hit the notification bell so you'll know when our next video is out.